7. So yes, very, very warm welcome to everyone. And thank you so much for joining me here, making this time for your own mind and your own heart, your own body, so you can develop more stability and presence in your life. And as I've been saying, I do believe that's an altruistic act and that will have a beneficial effect on others. So today we're moving on to look at how to manage and, if you like, train our thoughts and emotions. So the mental and emotional aspect of our experience. So far, at the first day, we came to general sense of the body. And then yesterday we explored this whole body 360-degree flow of breathing in the body. And we also felt our way a bit more into sensation and this initial arising of I like this and I don't like that. And when we're not aware, that immediately solidifies into, oh, go away, or oh, I want more. And the Buddha was very, very clear that craving and aversion, these compulsions of pushing away and pulling in, are the source of so much unnecessary suffering in humanity. So we began to look at, well, how do we get to know our sensations and how do we allow them to come and go without these automatic habitual reactions? And the sort of the central insight of the Buddha that we've been exploring through the week is impermanence. This idea that everything is changing. And I was saying on the first day, that's kind of obvious. We look at the outside world and we think, yes, why is that an insight? That's blindingly obvious. That seasons change, days change, tides change, years change, weather changes. We know all that. But then I said, what we often do is we default as if I'm somehow an exemption to that rule. So I've got this fixed being in here that's looking out at a changing world. And then the Buddha says, well, actually, no, you are also changing. And so then it's like, oh, so that applies to me as well. I'm also a process of flow. And then it's as if there's still another bit inside us that's fixed and unchanging, that's watching our own inner process of flow. And the Buddha's saying, well, no, there's not even that. There is just flow. That's all there is. There is just this arising and passing of experience. And it's this rigidifying against that and the solidifying around it that causes us so much suffering. So that's been the primary perspective I've been bringing to the whole week. Very much ties in with the work of Bernardo Kastrup, where he's got this idea that awareness can be like an ocean, very sort of broad and vast, but we get trapped in this kind of vortex of the whirlpool where we're just contracting around this misperception of a fixed and unchanging me in there somewhere. He has another metaphor which I thought was very, very good, and this was drawn out in the conversation between Danyutara and Viryadeva last Friday. And this is that we're flying through space in a plane, beautiful blue sky out there. We're flying along in the plane. The plane hasn't got any windows. It's got sensors, which is obviously making sure that it flies, stays afloat and all that kind of thing, stays aloft. And there's a dashboard that's monitoring all the senses. So you can see the dashboard. So you've got a sense of I'm in this plane and I'm flying along. You see the dashboard. And what we do is we mistake the dashboard for reality. We mistake the dashboard for the sky. We mistake the dashboard for everything. And he's suggesting that what we need to do is at the very least, somehow magically create some windows so we can at least see the blue sky. And then the dashboard is just a means of functioning, if you like, but it's taking place in this very broad, open context of the vast blue sky. So what we do is we mistake the dashboard for reality. That's the problem. Or we mistake the whirlpool for the ocean. And an image that came to me years ago, actually, it's a kind of strange metaphor, but I think it's quite effective. It's as if we're going around with paper bags over our heads and we mistake the inside of the paper bag for everything. And it's so deep and so conditioned and so habitual that we find that acceptable. we find that, okay, somehow we're willing to settle from the view of the inside of the paper bag, when what we need to do is take off the paper bag. We need to learn how to take off the paper bag. And it's like, wow, there's been this whole other way of perceiving there all the time. But I've just got so used to this very limited perception, very limited perspective, that I think that's okay. I think that's okay. So that's another kind of metaphor, that we're learning how to take off the paper bag so we can see. Or we're going around with big sort of filters on our glasses, these kind of things, if you're wearing glasses. And I also introduced on the first day, and I think this is a very important point, that there's this wonderful text of Buddhism where there's lots of people discoursing on non-duality, the nature of mind, the nature of consciousness, and so on. And then finally, one of the people has asked to give his presentation on non-duality, and he remains silent. He just remains silent. And the person who's doing the questioning is most satisfied with that answer. Most satisfied. There's been all these very profound, deep, metaphysical answers, but the person who remains silent is the one who gets the most praise. So that's, I think, very profound. You know, I'm doing all this talking about broadening the mind, opening the mind. Bernardo, all these, we use words to go beyond words. So that's a very important thing to remember, that everything that I'm saying, everything that any of us are saying, is only an approximation to the experience. And sometimes this is called being like a finger pointing at the moon. And we mustn't mistake the finger for the moon. The words are always pointing beyond words. And I think I just want you to remember that. And this answer of silence is often called the thunderous silence, which is wonderful, isn't it? The thunderous silence. You could say the thunderous silence of reality. So yeah, I'm obviously using words because that's our means of communication that we have as humans. But see if you can listen to the words, obviously, but see how they land, and then rest in the experience of how they land, because for you it will be an experience. This quality of the mind relaxing and softening is deeply experiential. It's not conceptual. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. And there's a wonderful Buddhist scholar from I think it was early maybe 19th century, I'm not sure, called Caroline Rhys Davis, and she says the whole path is becoming more and more on the way to the most. Becoming more and more on the way to the most, which I think is really great, partly because it's a verb, it's a process, and also that it's not a kind of fixed destination. It's just this endless process of unfolding, endless process of opening and softening. Yeah, so moving on to this mental and emotional aspect of our experience as humans. Buddhist psychology is quite clear that it starts with the senses. So it starts with the sort of work we were doing yesterday, or the sort of play we were doing yesterday, where we have senses that come into contact with the world. So the eye sees something, the ears hear something, the mouth tastes something, and so on. And then, as I said, there's this initial arising of, I like that, or don't like that. Usually we're completely unaware of that. We fall into pushing away and pulling towards, and then we start to proliferate loads and loads and loads of thoughts and emotions about what was in the first place a very sort of simple, basic sense impression. You know, this is, if you like, putting your mental and emotional experience in a scanner, in an MRI scanner, and taking a slice of a cross section, because of course we've just got a torrent of experience all the time, haven't we? It's not like, well, I'm seeing something, I'm having an initial arising of pleasant, unpleasant, now I'm going to have a thought. It's more that we've just got this massive cascade of experience pouring through the moments. But what the Buddha is clear about is that using awareness, we can I sometimes call it getting a bit of a wedge, a little bit of a wedge of space into that torrent, come back to the body, come back to our sensations, and begin to get a little bit of space in that torrent and a little bit of choice into that torrent. That's very much what the central teachings of the Buddha is about. Just keep coming back to the present, keep coming back to embodiment, get to know your sense impressions, get flexibility. We get a more flexibility of mind, and then we can choose which direction we go in. And the Buddha is very clear. We've got a route which is contracted, a route which is reactive, a route which will lead to more and more suffering. And there's a route that's more open, more spacious, more loving, this quality of release, and that will lead to freedom. And we can choose to go down the route of release, openness, freedom, rather than feeding the reactivity. So it's a very lovely kind of map that's offered in the Buddhist tradition. And I think one of the places where it's most well articulated is a text called the Satipatthana Sutta. So you could look that up later if you wanted. The Satipatthana Sutta is probably the most famous text on mindfulness in the Buddhist tradition. So when we're going down the route of solidifying, rigidifying, getting really caught up in thoughts and emotions that are tight, reactive, I think that's very similar to Bernardo Kastrup's image of getting trapped in the vortex of the whirlpool. So we've got this whirlpool in the great ocean of mind. The whirlpool is our individual self, our sense of the functioning self. And rather than remembering, I mean, obviously, I'm not sure if a whirlpool has a memory, so this is all metaphorical. Rather than remembering that there is the great ocean also present, we just get sucked into a tighter and tighter and tighter spiral of thoughts and emotions. So I think that's where it's a good metaphor, because we all know what that feels like, getting sucked into a vortex, an ever-tightening spiral of more and more proliferation of difficult and challenging thoughts and emotions. I'm talking about thoughts and emotions together, and I know Western psychology doesn't necessarily do this, but the reason I'm doing this is because the thing I've also been saying all through the week is it's all about experience. It's all about what's actually happening. That's the skill we're learning, to come into the present and know what's actually happening. And I think experientially, thoughts and emotions almost always co-arise. You know, one can have a debate about which comes first. I'm not sure that that's necessarily when we're just looking at trying to get a bit of space into this torrent of experience. But most thoughts have emotional content and most emotions have mental content. So I'm just trying to keep it simple. So that's why I'm approaching like this. And I think mindfulness, awareness, learning to work with our experience can be approached through the lens of simplicity. And generally, I find that helpful in the teaching that I do. I generally find that it's so easy for humans to get very conceptual, metaphysical. You know, we could spend a lot of time really examining, does a thought or emotion come first? That might be useful. But the main thing is, I'm having this experience. I'm having this experience of anger or greed or desire, or I'm having mental arguments with someone, or I'm feeling love. I'm looking at that blossom tree and I'm feeling this love of beauty. There's my friend. I love my friend. That's the main thing to be aware of. Is your mind closing down? And when I say mind, I mean thoughts and emotions today, or is it opening up? And I think Sona might have told you this last month, but I think it's quite helpful if your mind feels very busy. If you feel like, wow, I've got a lot of thoughts, then these stats are helpful, because you realize that you're really normal if you feel like you've got a lot of thoughts. That apparently we have something like 30,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Yeah, I mean, that is a lot of thoughts. The research isn't brilliant that identified this, but there is some other research showing that the psychological present is about 3 seconds. So even if you think you're only having a thought every 3 seconds, that's nearly 30,000 thoughts a day. And I know for myself, when my mind is very busy, it's a lot more than once every 3 seconds. So the main point is you've got tens of thousands of thoughts a day. And in the untrained mind, someone who hasn't learnt the sort of work that we're doing this week, how to work with awareness, in the untrained mind, about 75% of them are negative. So that's very, very interesting. So if you feel like you're plagued by negative thoughts and negative emotions, again, that's pretty normal. And it's all to do with the way we've evolved, and we're very threat oriented, to do with survival. I won't go into that now, but sorry about that funny noise. It's very normal in the unaware human consciousness to have, or this narrow individual consciousness, to have quite a lot of negative thoughts. And the other thing that's very interesting is that more than 95% of them we've had before. So in the normal untrained human, we've just got this repetitive looping of thousands and thousands of fairly negative thoughts, and it might be strongly negative or moderately negative. So I'm telling you that because it can oddly be encouraging. So rather than thinking, well, I'm the only person that has lots and lots of thoughts, and quite a lot of them seem to be negative, and quite a lot of them seem to be repetitive. Why am I like this? I'm sure everyone else has got a really wonderful, clear mind. Hearing these stats, you think, oh, actually, I'm just pretty normal. I'm just a normal human being. And the great thing is, according to everything that I'm teaching this week, everything in this project, is it's possible to really change that. It's possible to really shift the ratio from negative to positive. It's possible to bring clarity to this torrent of stuff pouring through the mind and the heart and the body, because the body is, as we've been seeing, very much part of this whole experience. It's possible to bring much more spaciousness, much more flexibility, pliability. To use Bernardo's image of the whirlpool, we can stop at having this kind of this spiral, this vortex. It can soften, open, release, just be part of the ocean. This gentle whirlpool as part of the ocean. I think that's a really lovely metaphor for that. Yeah, so the main thing is to be aware. The main thing is to be aware, to bring awareness to this torrent of stuff that's part of the present moment for all of us. Come back to the present, come back to the body, be aware of breathing in the body. Gives us an anchor for the mind. I think Sona talked about dropping anchor. I think that's very good. So the mind can feel all up here, so we ground it in the body, we drop anchor, shift our awareness from being completely caught up here to giving it another object, if you like, and the object is sensations in the body. And every time we come to sensations, where, if you like, we're resetting that cascade, and we can make these choices. We become aware of, oh, this is a bit unpleasant, this is pleasant. I don't need to feed the unpleasant. I don't need to go there. I don't need to get caught up in this great loop. And I could actually just try resting in the pleasant, and resting in openness, resting in something that's got that, what I often call the taste of release, or the flavor of release. We can learn how to rest a little bit more in that, and then guide this flow of experience in the direction of expansiveness. Remember there's the blue sky, remember there's the ocean. Begin to get the paper bag off the head and realize that it's possible to have a profoundly different perspective on life, on our experience. Yeah, so there's another thing, is for those of you who are new to meditation, quite often people have an idea that if you're really good at meditation, you won't think. That meditation's about making the mind blank. That's a very common view about meditation. Well, if you have that thought, you're going to fail for sure, because it's totally normal to think. It's totally normal to think. So meditation is much more about becoming aware of our thoughts, becoming aware of our thoughts and disentangling ourselves a little bit from their content by coming back to the simplicity of the present moment in all the ways I've just been describing. Okay, just to finish this little introduction, I've got a few images because sometimes metaphors, images, they will stay with you more than words. So I'll just share my screen. So one great image is that our thoughts and emotions can be like a snowball rolling down a slope. And of course, what happens to a snowball as it rolls down the slope? It just gets bigger and bigger, doesn't it? So we can have this sense of it's all snowballing in there. Everything's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'm getting more and more identified with the content, getting completely lost in the internal argument or the worry or the fantasy, whatever it might be. So it gets a life of its own, as we will all know. And then awareness, we can see as really bright, warm sunshine. So awareness comes in and it melts the snowball. So awareness is like this heat, this warmth, brightness. And as we all know, a snowball will not survive in that environment. So awareness melts the snowball. I think that's a really lovely image. Another one is that our untrained mind is like a puppy. And we all know what puppies do. They love to chase after things. So, we have a sense impression and the mind just rushes off after it. And then, you train your puppy, you call it back, it comes back for a microsecond, then it runs off again. But then eventually your puppy becomes like a well-trained dog. So the puppy of the mind can become like this beautiful dog, just walking beside its owner. It looks very happy, that dog. It's not been cowed by the experience. So that's what we're doing with meditation. In a sense, we're taking our experience to the gym. We're taking the mind and the heart and the body to the gym, metaphorically, and we're training. And today it's about training this sort of mental, emotional side of things. Becoming more mentally fit. That's sometimes the way it's also talked about. Another really lovely image is that when the mind isn't trained, we're like a stag in undergrowth and we're trying to move forward and we're just getting totally tangled up in the undergrowth with our antlers. And I think this is a good image because the thoughts can all feel like they're up here. It is like we've got antlers and we're trying to move forwards in our life and we're just getting snagged, tangled up. And the more we try to move forwards, the more tangled we get. So that's not a particularly great way to be. So we need to become like a fox that's able to just slide through the undergrowth, very alert, sleek, able to see the obstructions, able to see the obstacles, the branches and so on, just finding a way around those. And look at that expression, it's so alert, so present. So rather than being all our antlers getting tangled up, we become like a fox. And a very traditional image of the untrained mind is like a monkey in a tree. And what monkeys do is they just chase after things. They see something on another branch and off they go. They just leap up to that branch. They see a bit of fruit over here, they'll leap over there. So the mind is like a monkey just chasing after things. And we need to develop the mind of an elephant. Yeah, the mind of an elephant. Elephants are very grounded, very stable. And that when they look at something, they have to turn their whole body. They can't twist their necks very easily. So what they do is they fully attend, they turn their whole body and they attend. And look at that gaze of that elephant. So rather than having monkey mind, we can cultivate elephant mind. And then there's this lovely story from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. There was a great meditation master called Milarepa, and he said that we need to be like a lion, not a dog. And he says that If you throw a stick or a stone to a dog, the dog will chase after it, won't it? The dog will just chase after the stick or the stone. So when you run after your thoughts, you're like a dog chasing the stick or the stone. Instead, be like a lion who, rather than chasing after the stick, turns to face the owner. Such a great image, this. So a lion won't chase after the stone or the stick. He'll turn around and say, "Who threw that?" That will be, if a lion had a thought, it would be, "Who threw that?" And turns around quickly. Where did that come from? So we need to develop that attitude. And of course, the metaphor here is you tend to look at your own mind. You tend to look at, well, where did that come from? It came from my experience. It came from my own thoughts. It came from my own emotions. It came from this whole embodied experience of being alive. So rather than chasing after things like the dog, we become the lion who tends to look at the owner. Where did that come from? So that's a really lovely image as well. So in the practice we're going to do in a moment, I'm going to do two main approaches to this. The first one is to bring the power of the mind back to the state of mindfulness and body awareness. And I always say this is the best place to start, because a lot of these thousands and thousands of thoughts we're having, they're relatively minor. It's just kind of chatter, chit chat, what's for breakfast? Can they hear me? Is the mic working? All these, it's just kind of minor chatter, not particularly emotionally charged. So if you imagine that your mind is like that bull, and the tree is your body, your present moment experience, your sensations, your breathing, and then the rope is mindfulness. You just keep bringing the mind back to the stake of awareness with the rope of mindfulness. And that bull looks quite happy, I think, quite settled. But of course, sometimes that doesn't work. If you've got thoughts and emotions that are charged, emotionally charged, they're, I don't know, maybe today I was going to the doctor to get results of a test. I'm not, as it happens, but just if I was, and I kept on bringing the mind back, the mind would just keep on bouncing back to, oh no, it might be cancer. What is it? I'm really worried. Keep coming back. It bounces back to the worry and the anxiety. And it can just create quite a lot of tension, this sort of ricocheting between dragging the awareness back to the present and then bouncing back into the content of the worry. So the other option is you give your mind a big field and you take mindfulness with you. So in that instance, I would acknowledge I'm really anxious, I'm worried. Let me just breathe with that worry. So rather than creating this tension, let me just acknowledge I'm worried, be kind around that and breathe with that. So bring body awareness to the worry, as it were, rather than keeping on dragging my mind back and suppressing the worry, because that won't work. So the image here is to be a mind whisperer, like a horse whisperer. So horse whisperers, they train horses by a very sort of slow, steady process of giving the horse a long rope. See, the horse there's got a long rope, and the owner is very gradually coming into contact with the horse. You can see this connection there, and the horse is learning how to stabilize itself. The horse is learning to trust, as it were, the owner. So rather than having a tight rope on the horse, you give the horse its head, as it were. So this, in meditation, we're like a mind whisperer. We have awareness. So the owner here is like our awareness. And there is engagement, obviously. There's the rope, but the rope in this instance is quite slack. And we're very sensitive to the activity of the mind. And we learn how to engage with it in a kind and sensitive way. Okay, so I'll lead a practice now, and we'll go through body awareness, stabilizing, and then we'll engage with our thoughts and emotions. I'll ask you to really become aware of what's happening. We'll have a go at just coming back to the body, coming back to breathing, letting go of the thoughts, and then we'll have a go at if you've got anything that feels very charged, how you might engage with that in a skillful, gentle, kindly way. So with the mind whispering metaphor, you do eventually train yourself to come back to more presence, more stability, but you do it through, I suppose, invitation rather than instruction. Maybe that's one way of talking about it. So if in this example I just gave, if I was worried about something today, going to the doctor, I'd start breathing with that worry, and then very gently and gradually I'd start shifting the weight of my focus from the worry back to the body. But it's just a gradual process of shifting, but not opposing the mind. Generally, opposing the mind doesn't work very well. Okay, so if we set ourselves up, as always, as I said at the beginning, for those of you that weren't here, be a bit fussy about your posture. So if you need to get a different chair, do that. If you need to adjust your cushions, if you're sitting on cushions, do that. Making sure that your hands are supported in one way or another so that the shoulders can rest into gravity, fall away from the midline of the body. Closing the eyes if you want to. If that's not comfortable for you, you could lower your gaze. It's up to you. Let's begin by settling. Just getting a sense of the body sitting here. Feeling into the contact between the body and the surface it's resting upon. Whether it's a chair or cushions, meditation stool or something else. And having this quality of yielding the weight of the body up to the support. I was saying yesterday, it's always helpful to soften the buttocks. Rest into groundedness. If you find it helpful, you could take a deeper in-breath, and on the out-breath, arrive and release, yield a little bit more. Do that a few times if you want to. Settling. Really let the out-breath go all the way out, and then let the in-breath flow back in its own time. So I was saying yesterday, it's often the out-breath that we inhibit. So simply giving the out-breath full expression can in itself be quite releasing. When you're ready, just allowing your breathing to find its own natural rhythm. Breathing deep in the body. So we're not thinking about breathing as a concept or an abstraction. We're resting inside breathing inside the body. The flow of breathing in this more fluid body than we normally perceive. So just beginning to soften the body up a little bit. Just feeling rigid and stuck and hard and kind of immobile. Yes, it is still, but there's also this movement, this flow of breathing, and allowing the body to receive that in the front and the back and the sides, the inside and the surface of the whole body. I introduced the experience or the idea of 360-degree breathing yesterday. So seeing if we can drop back inside 360-degree breathing, the whole body opening a little bit in all directions on the in-breath, subsiding, yielding, resting back into gravity with the out-breath. Being careful not to force or strain the natural breathing. There's a lovely saying from a Chinese Buddhist text. When the movement is still, the stillness can move. When the movement is still, the stillness can move. So we haven't got any big physical movements going on. There's this stillness of the body. And then in that, there's a subtle movement, the flow of experience. Breathing in the whole body. And now let's turn our awareness to our emotions and our thoughts. So perhaps first of all, let's tune into what we might call our emotional weather. You could even become aware of the area around the physical heart, perhaps. Beginning to open our awareness to include whatever's arising here, our emotional weather. Just getting a sense of, is it dull? Is it happy? Bright? Anxious? Fearful? Confused? You're not sure? Being aware of confusion, being aware of not knowing what's going on, that is also awareness. That is also succeeding in the practice. And when you become aware of something, be careful not to fix it, to make it static. Maybe this image of weather is quite good, that weather changes. So maybe one moment it's a bit misty, the next moment it's a bit brighter. Just becoming sort of edging into awareness of this emotional flow that's taking place within us. And that might be located around the heart, or that might not work for you. There might be some other way that emotional awareness is arising. And being aware of what thoughts are present. As soon as you have the emotion, there's probably some thinking going on. Or it might be that your thoughts are really dominating. It's like you've got a radio going on inside your head. Just bringing awareness to this emotional, mental continuum for a few moments with this attitude of curiosity, knowing, investigation, and letting go of harsh value judgments. At the moment, we're just getting to know what's actually happening. So now let's bring a little bit of intentionality into our practice, into our awareness. So first of all, we notice we've got lots of chit chat going on. Let's see if we can shift our awareness to rest back inside breathing, inside the body, with this attitude of yielding and softening, softening in the buttocks, softening in the body. Seeing if we can become more interested in present moment embodied awareness than getting swept away by the chit chat. I'm thinking about breakfast. Drop back inside breathing, inside the body. Let that fill my awareness, whatever it might be for you. And you might notice there's an experience going on, this mental and emotional continuum that just keeps on coming back. You invite your awareness back to rest inside breathing in the body, and then you just bounce straight back into the content of whatever it is that's dominating your awareness. Something that's emotionally charged, perhaps. So if that's happening for you, see what it's like to breathe with that experience. So you're not opposing it, you're not trying to drag your awareness away from it, not resisting it, but be like a mind whisperer. Breathe with that experience. Bring an attitude of kindliness to that experience. And then very, very gently and gradually allow breathing and body awareness to fill more and more of your awareness. Maybe as you shift your awareness back inside the body a little bit more fully, this physical pain present, or maybe there's contraction. That's an expression of the mental and emotional state. If that arises, then taking our awareness there with kindness, softening, yielding, allowing these physical states of tightness to be a little bit more fluid, their sensation, arising and passing moment by moment. And always paying particular attention to keep the buttocks soft and the jaw soft. These are areas that automatically tighten usually when we're in contracted states. Softening, opening, yielding again and again, physically, mentally, emotionally. What's happening now? If you're completely lost, letting go of harsh value judgment and instead thinking, wow, I've become aware that I'm lost. That's brilliant. And now I can choose to shift my awareness back inside breathing, inside the body, inside yielding. Regroup, as it were. Come back to this basic experience, the body, senses. Let my awareness rest there. We've still got experiences that are very emotionally charged, very hot, as it were, very intense. Just keep on practicing becoming a mind whisperer, being aware of these experiences with this kind of soft, kind awareness. Don't oppose. Breathe with these experiences, soften the body around these experiences again and again. If it all gets a bit much at any point, then broadening awareness, being aware of the whole body, feet, hands, soften the body, soften the jaw. Maybe be aware of sounds. So open your awareness if it gets too tight and intense. And if you're feeling a bit bored, drifty, then you might choose for these last few moments to really attend. I think I've got a few minutes now where I can bring a bit more application of awareness to what's going on. And now let's let go of any effort whatsoever for the last few moments. Moving on to what's called a just sitting practice, where we do just that. We just sit, absorb, relax. And noticing the effect of the practice that we've just done. Now bring a tiny bit of movement into the body, maybe moving the fingers and the toes. And just notice what arises as you do this, what thoughts pop into the mind, what feelings, emotions. Do you have a habit of gripping around experience as soon as you introduce movement? And can you keep your mind, heart, your body fluid? As you begin to move, your breathing fluid. Coming into slightly bigger movements, maybe the hands around the wrists. Again, just notice what happens as we introduce movement. So interesting. Do you want to rush? Can you stay inside the movement? And when we're ready, opening the eyes, coming to bigger movements, moving however we want to. Good. So I'm imagining some of you might need to go off to work now in Europe or in the UK. So if you need to leave now, then thank you so much for coming. It's been wonderful to practice with you. And tomorrow I'm going to move on to love. So we're going to look at where love fits into all this. and how can we rest our awareness in love and cultivate love. So I hope to see you tomorrow. And for those of you who are who want to stay, we've got about half an hour now for questions and answers and discussion. But the first thing I'm going to do is move my body, because that needs that. So if any of you need to move, then please do so. Sitting for an hour and a half is it's not really what bodies are designed to do. So I'm going to mute myself and raise my desk up. So when I've levitated, Nick, if you can unmute me, please. Good. Okay, so yes, if you've got any questions, but also if you just want to share anything that you noticed in the practice, share your experience, that might be nice, rather than necessarily questions. Sometimes going into questioning mode can be quite conceptual after a practice, can't it? But then there might be questions that you've got, and of course I totally welcome those. Oh, that's very nice, Sudden Nandi. She says, thanks. I have a lot of thoughts that need working with, and I'm enjoying becoming a fox. That's great. I think that image of the stag and the fox, so good, isn't it? So good, because we all know what it feels like, I'm sure, to be totally tangled up in the undergrowth of our thoughts. And the more we try to push into them, the more tangled we get. But the fox, the beautiful little fox, yeah. I mean, if anyone wanted to get into a bit of dialogue about what happened in your practice, then I'm really happy to do that. You could just use the raise hand feature in the reactions at the bottom. If you raise your hand, then I'll know that you're there, and Nick can let you unmute. Yeah, we could have a conversation, a bit of a dialogue. But we have got some questions now, haven't we?
So Peter's saying, I struggle with recognizing my troubling repetitive thoughts, allowing them, but then also releasing them gently. Can you talk more about how we allow at the same time as releasing?
Yeah, good. Wow. Yeah, very good. Well, in a way, what you've just said, allowing them. Oh, I see. No, I'm just reading your question again here. I understand. Well, the allowing aspect is awareness. The first thing we need to do is become aware of what's happening. And so many of our thoughts fly under the radar, don't they? They're just chuntering away under the radar. We're not aware, but they're going to show up in our behavior. They're going to show up in our tone of voice. They're going to show up as tension in the body. They're going to show up as sort of unresolved emotions sometimes. So the first thing is awareness. You're calling them troubling repetitive thoughts. So it's like, oh, I've got these thoughts. They're repeating themselves, and this is their content. Oh, I tend to worry. That's interesting. Or I tend to craving. That's interesting. Or I tend to aversive thoughts. I'm always complaining about things internally. Some of us are like that, aren't we? We've just got an internal moaner who's going on and on and on about virtually everything. So you think, oh, that's so interesting. I've got this moaning person in my head. It's not me, as I've been saying. There isn't any sort of ultimate fixed me in here anyway. It's a habit. I've got this tendency of craving, desire, moaning, whatever it might be. And you can also look at the content more precisely if you want to, which is, I tend to moan about the weather, or there's this person at work that is my favorite thing to think about. And it just keeps on coming back. That's the awareness aspect. And then what we do is we bring kindness to that. We don't think I'm a terrible person because I've got these habitual negative thoughts. You think, oh, that's so interesting. I'm human. I'm just like everyone else with 75% negative thoughts. Okay. But I'm not stuck with this. If everything's changing, everything's fluid, everything's impermanent, which is the underlying view, if you like, that I'm bringing to this whole week, then things can change. I'm not stuck with these thoughts. So let me see if I can soften around them a wee bit. And very often awareness itself can be quite releasing. Very often, as soon as you're aware, wow, I'm really angry, you're no longer lost in anger. As soon as there's an awareness of, these are angry thoughts, you're no longer completely lost in them. You've stepped back a tiny bit as soon as you become aware. So even investigating that can be so helpful, but the power of awareness. What's that like? I'm aware that I'm having angry thoughts. That I'm no longer completely consumed by them because there's this tiny bit of perspective. Okay, so what's that like? Yeah, I've still got the thoughts, still quite strong. Maybe begin to be a bit more lighthearted around it. Okay, let me come into my body. Where's that anger in my body? Oh my God, my hands are really tight. Okay, let me soften my hands. My stomach's tight. Let me relax my bum. Let me relax my buttocks. Let me yield, soften. Oh, that's it's not really working. My stomach's still really tight. Okay, let me come into the back of my body. Let me breathe into the back of my body. Oh, okay, my stomach's tightening a bit now, releasing a bit now. Oh, I'm no longer caught up with my angry thoughts because I'm so interested in this physical reflection of the angry thoughts. That's occupying my awareness. And the angry thoughts have gone. So that's the kind of way we can practice. Playing, being quite playful with yourself, being very, very curious, and moving your awareness around, like what I did there. Go your hands, then the pit of your stomach. Oh God, that's really tight. Go there. It doesn't work to go at it head on. It just gets tighter. So then, I'll come into the back of my body. I'll breathe into the back of my body. And then it's like, I'm feeling a bit better. Everything's kind of softened up and released a little bit. So sort of move around, be playful, be curious. But the first thing is awareness. The first thing is simple awareness. That in itself can sometimes be enough to sort of pop the balloon of what can feel very solid. Just very, very mixed metaphors there, isn't it? But another metaphor which is more accurate. Imagine you've got a body of water and there are these bubbles coming up, and these bubbles are your thoughts and emotions. Then you can just pop the bubble and they go. Yeah, that can really work with awareness. Okay, good. What else have we got?
Alison saying, often when I focus on my breath, it speeds up and I have to slow it down before I hyperventilate. Yeah. How can I work with this?
Yeah, very good. Thank you for asking that, because that's not an uncommon situation. So this word focus is a bit of a key word there. So when we focus, sometimes it's like you particularly come into the chest area. That's what a lot of people do. They come here or here, and then you're focusing on breathing, and then breathing starts to get a bit disturbed because you're coming at it too strongly and start to hyperventilate. So the language I use is more resting inside breathing, resting inside the body. Come into the back of the body. And as soon as you start over focusing, your jaw will be tight and your bum will be tight. So very good just to always remember this very simple thing of check on your buttocks. If your buttocks can be soft, then your breathing will be softer, for the physiological reasons I mentioned yesterday. So focus, I think, is a tricky word, because where we are wanting to have a less scattered mind, of course, and to have a mind that's more focused, but maybe absorbed might be a better word. We're becoming absorbed in the experience of breathing rather than focusing on breathing. Absorbed inside the experience of breathing. Yeah, and if you notice that, I'm it is becoming a bit much, I'm hyperventilating, then back off, come into the back of the body, come lower in the body, come into your feet, come into your hands, relax your bum, these kind of things. And sometimes, actually, as well, important thing to say, sometimes breathing just doesn't really work for us. So come into broad body awareness. If breathing's just all a bit agitated and using breathing as an anchor isn't really working, then use broad body awareness as your anchor. Yeah. So rather than keeping on pushing at breathing, if that's not working, then just really back off and use the whole body. Good.
So Tijani is saying, I felt a sense of ease when coming back to the body, especially after being lost in thoughts, often about how I should be on the outside. Is there a danger of getting attached to the sense of ease?
No, I don't think so. I think that, if we can get an experience of ease, then we should just celebrate that and think, wow, that's really good. That's a kind of off the cuff, sort of fairly superficial answer. But I think, let me just think about that a bit more deeply. Maybe it's the value that we give to that feeling of ease, or the way the meaning we give to it. So if it's like I just want to feel more at ease because it's a bit more pleasant, so I can have a nicer life, that's okay, but it's not going to be the deepest reflection. If it's realizing that we are all continually sort of co-creating our experience of life, like right now, I'm here, you're there, I can see you all. It's very dynamic what's going on, and you will have a similar experience. We're continually sort of affecting one another, and I'll say much more about this tomorrow. Then if you're a person who's embodying ease in the world, that's going to be a really good thing for everybody else. If you're a person who's embodying ease as opposed to tightness and contraction and irritation and frustration and anger and desire, all these other things. If you're a person who sort of flows through the world more benevolent, more easeful, I think ease is a lovely word actually, more easeful, then you're going to bring those ripples into the world, and that's going to be a really good thing. But I think probably for most of us in the modern world, ease is not our default setting. So if we can manage to experience that in meditation, then I think that's something to just enjoy, probably. Let me just, is there a danger of getting attached? Yeah, so let me just go into that a tiny bit. So everything I've just said, I stand by, but this word attached, let me just go into this word attached a little bit, because one of the real mistakes we can make with meditation, and I'm sure many of us have done this, is say you've had an experience just now that was more easeful. So you're saying that you had that, Tijani. So if tomorrow you meditate and you think, oh, I really want to have that experience I had yesterday, then you almost certainly won't, because you've got this grasping mind thing. I want to have what I had yesterday. If tomorrow you're open to whatever arises, you've got confidence from what happened today, and you think, oh, it's possible to really have this agility with my thoughts, my emotions. It's possible to have a softer, kind of more open experience. You've got the confidence of that, but then you meet whatever's arising tomorrow afresh, because it is all afresh. When every single moment is new, in a sense. We've got all the learning from the past, but every moment is new. So that's a mistake many of us have made, where we try to sort of replicate experiences we had in the past, and it just all gets a bit tight, and then it gets disappointing, and then you think meditation doesn't work, and then you give up. That will be a shame. So it's more knowing the possibility of ease, but then also not trying to grasp onto it in the future moment. So I'm glad that I picked up that attachment word. I mean, meditation's so interesting like that. It's all kind of, you know, sometimes when I've had absolutely no expectations, you know, I'm feeling a bit knackered, I've got loads of pain, worried about something, and I think, well, I'll meditate because I know that's a good thing to do because I do. Sometimes I'm totally surprised by what arises. Whereas when I go in thinking, oh, I feel really good today and I'm going to have a good meditation, then it's disappointing because I'm bringing all this weight of sort of desire and expectation and attachment to the experience. Yeah. So even if you think, oh, I feel really awful today, I don't want to meditate, do meditate. And in my experience, it's often when the mind hasn't got any grasping, that's when the biggest surprises can happen. Okay, good. Anything else?
So Philip is saying 360 breathing is helpful, but I was over focusing on the technique.
Oh, that's so, yes, that's what we do, isn't it, as humans? Yeah. So basically, it's not a technique. You know, the 360 degree breathing is a kind of it's a label, it's a concept, of course it is, but it's pointing to experience. So it's very much the what we've been talking about the whole week. It's experience that's important, and the concepts are entirely secondary to the experience. The concepts are there to help us drop into the experience. So again, okay, so it'd be interesting to ask you what happened when you, if I don't know if you're willing to unmute yourself, but what happened when you noticed you were over focusing on the technique? Then what happened? And if you don't want to unmute yourself, you could maybe put something in the chat box.
Hi.
Hi, good.
I started judging myself that I was doing it wrong, and so I got lost on a spiral. So, but I can see how it could be helpful if I relaxed into it a little bit more.
Yeah, and so okay, so if you're willing to just dialogue a wee bit. So you got lost, and you noticed you were judging yourself and got lost in a spiral, and then what happened?
I suppose I withdrew from the whole thing, and I went into a I think you mentioned earlier about breathing can sometimes lead to other conditions, hyperventilation, and thinking, oh, I'm doing this wrong, and should I be diaphragm breathing? And that experience didn't help this and that. So yeah, it just spiraled really, and I did come back when I realised.
Okay, so let's stay with that moment of I did come back when I realised. Yeah. So what was that process? How did you realise? How did you become aware of what was happening?
Only through some experience, I suppose, of realising it was supposed to be a helpful thought, but it wasn't helpful because it became judgmental. So it's just from prior experience of knowing how my mind works sometimes, thinking it's doing something helpful, but it's not.
Yeah. And then, so tons of awareness there, which is brilliant, because that's the practice. You know, you know what your mind's tendency are. You did it again today. You noticed you were judging, got into a bit of a downward spiral. And then there was this moment where you brought yourself back. So how did you bring yourself back?
Good question. I don't know, to be honest. I'm not sure how I did. Maybe because you were there, it was supportive being in a group, and I was able to sort of feel more the whole body experience, perhaps, and because you were cueing, feeling the ground and the buttocks and the body, so getting out of the breath a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. So bringing yourself back, what did that feel like?
I relaxed then, and I dropped the breathing technique.
Okay, good. Yeah, so good. So thank you so much for unmuting, because it's wonderful to hear your experience. So, and very interesting that initially you were describing it in negative terms. You know, I couldn't do it. I started judging myself. I got lost. But then there was also a lot that was very, very positive in there. You know, you noticed it. You thought, this is what I do. This is my tendency. you thought this isn't working for me, you dropped the breathing, you came back to your body, you relaxed your buttocks, and you re-engaged with the practice. And that is the process of awareness that we all go through. So I'd like you to kind of reframe that from I did that wrong to wow, that was amazing learning, and I brought myself back. And I stopped doing this breathing thing because it wasn't working for me, and I just dropped into my whole body. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really great for other people to hear that. I'm sure many people will relate to that. Thank you. So does anyone else want to do what Philippa just did? Just raise your hand, and then Nick will see where you are and share what you noticed in that practice, and then I'll do a little bit of this inquiry with you. Just got another 10 minutes. Bit scary, I know, in front of 79 people. Yeah, it's just a very simple question. What did you notice? You don't have to have had any amazing experience, but what was the process of awareness for you in that practice? Good, so we've got Alex. So are you willing to unmute yourself, Alex?
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Morning. I just noticed that, this has come up before, I've had pain in my neck, and it can be overwhelmingly distracting. And I think I really took to heart what you said the other day about sort of feeling it, and actually it did help, because it just I kind of really saw it for what it was, and I was just like, okay, I can feel the pain, and where is the pain? Where does it extend to? That sort of thing. How long is it lasting for? Unfortunately, it was most of the meditation, but I did move because I thought actually that's going to help, and
good.
It became less distracting, and I think for me that felt important. And yeah, it was just that was so my experience a lot of was around using that technique from the other day that you mentioned, and sort of feeling into it, and actually which bits of the body are feeling okay, and that was most of it. So that was really helpful, really positive.
Yeah, good. So how did you, what was the sort of process of sort of choice? This is so interesting, isn't it? Choice about like investigating what we call pain, which is this flow of sensations.
Yeah.
Investigating that, and then going to another part of the body that wasn't hurting. What was that process of discernment for you?
First of all, just I think noticing, like even just noticing it was there. And just, yeah, I guess the choice would be between sort of a positive and negative thinking for me. It's wasn't quite black and white. It's just like it could either be take over the whole practice really and make me just not at all enjoy it, or to just actually use it. I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, good. And what was the kind of mental activity around it? So, like it sounds like quite a lot of your thoughts were tied up with this pain in my neck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what were the emotions associated with that?
Annoyance. And then just trying to to just then use it. I think just from what you said the other day, and I've heard some similar things before, but it was very well put. So I think I just thought, yeah, actually I can think about it in a more useful way.
Yeah. Good. And I guess what you're also really articulating very well is, rather than the pain in my neck getting in the way of this meditation I should be having, the pain in my neck is the meditation.
Yeah.
Because that's what's showing up.
Yeah.
And then you know, learning how to work with that. Good. Good. And how did you feel at the end compared with at the beginning?
Just more positive, I think, about that feeling, and actually that I can work with it, and it's not the end of the world.
Brilliant.
I think sometimes when I've had it before, it's just I've ended up like just even stopping the meditation and things like that.
So that's a really big thing you've just said.
Yeah.
You know, you've got pain in your neck, And you ended up feeling more positive at the end of, half an hour of sitting with it. So that's something you can really take into your life, isn't it?
Yeah, I think before I thought that it was because I've had this since it's basically from breastfeeding, and I think I've often thought it's going to be a bit of an obstacle, actually, and it's helped to sort of free it up a bit.
Yes, good. Yeah, well, many of us do think that, pain is an obstacle and we shouldn't be having it. And if only we didn't have it, I'm sure no one else has got it. And we get into all these loops, but it is what it is. Here it is. And how can you free up your awareness around it? So brilliant. Yeah. Well done. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Good. So we've got Miriam.
Hello.
This will be the last. Miriam will be the last person this morning. If any of you are sitting there thinking, "Oh, I'm frightened, but I want to," you can just relax around that now because we haven't got time for anyone else. Okay, Miriam, thank you.
Hi. I just want to say hi to Alex as well. She's familiar. We went on a retreat together at Tara Loca. So
fantastic.
I think just one of the things I noticed was when you said that we can breathe into the thought if the thought has particular sort of power. And so I was doing that because I can go back to the same theme and I go like the snowball, start going, oh, this will happen and that'll happen, then this will happen and that'll happen. And instead I was able to notice and breathe into that. And I just noticed it just felt very different, like being able to relax around that thought rather than try and drop it and move away.
Yeah.
Or stay with it and get tangled up in it. So I found that helpful. I don't think I've really realized that that's something I can do with those kinds of thoughts.
Good. And what happened to the thoughts when you did that?
No.
They did sort of fizzle, almost expand and sort of fizzle.
Great, fizzle. That's a great image. Yeah. Expand and fizzle. Yeah. So keep going.
No, I suppose the interesting thing was then I actually started thinking about other things. So even though I was still going back to thinking, I wasn't going back to the same thought. So that was interesting as well.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, because the mind likes to think. So we'll find other things to think about. But that's wonderful. Yes, so that by breathing with it, it took some of the charge out of the thoughts. And
I have the tablet. I can see that now.
I think Alex is
unmuted.
Yeah, good. So what was the actual process for you? Like you breathe with it. Can you sort of track a little bit more precision what actually happened? So you had this thought. So first of all, I guess you became aware I'm having that thought again.
Yeah, I became aware of having that thought. And then I suppose in a different kind of way, I chose to stay and notice it more fully, rather than almost rush to, I think the previous lady was talking about the technique, like stick with the technique, get back to the breath kind of thing, just staying with it. And I think the way it felt was, it felt kind. I think that was a nice, it felt pleasant to realize that I can respond to that with kindness. Yeah,
good. And that's, again, a big thing to say, because we're quite bullying with our own minds, can't we? We sort of berate our minds and they just fight back, of course they do. But to just be soft and a little bit more accepting, but with this overall trajectory of, I don't want to stay with this kind of habitual repetitive thought. How can I gradually move away from that? And the idea of fizzling, brilliant. Broadening, softening, brilliant. Yeah. Good. So thank you so much. That's a really good description.
Thank you.
Thanks, Miriam. Yeah. See if you can take that into your day, of course. For all of us, if we can take these techniques, or these ways of dancing with our own minds into our day. Okay, good. So look at this. It's 29 minutes past 8. So I think we've got through the questions, haven't we? Good. So those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, hope you have a good evening, good night's sleep. Those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, I hope you have a good day. And yeah, it's so rich, isn't it? You've got body awareness, breathing, softening the buttocks, softening the jaw, thoughts, emotions. Are you a stag? Are you a fox? Melting the snowball. So many things to take into your daily life, because that's the point of meditation. Meditation isn't an end in itself. Meditation is training so we can take it all into our daily life and be a more open, fluid being in this world for the benefit of all. And as I say, we're going to go much more into that sort of interconnected, loving aspect tomorrow. Good. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
You want to unmute and do a big goodbye. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone, that was superb.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Vidyamala.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vidyamala. That was fantastic.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.